This is a story about an overweight woman who unexpectedly possessed a magic scale that could exchange fat for money. But unbeknownst to her, it harbored a mysterious and horrible truth behind it. Prida was a 25-year-old female office worker. Due to her being overweight, Prida had low self-esteem and her personality was also very awkward. One day, the company decided to throw a party to celebrate the success of a project. Seeing Prida sitting alone, a friendly male colleague approached her and invited her to sing a karaoke duet with him. Prida bluntly refused the offer. Her friend Kathy had to tell the man that Prida would sing with him later. However, Prida said she wasn't into boys who were both poor and ugly, and she told the guy to go away. The man was taken aback by what Prida said to him. It clearly disappointed him. After being rejected by Prida, the man just left quietly without saying a word. Although being a close friend of Prida, Kathy really felt uncomfortable with her friend's behavior. Prida said, why wouldn't an overweight woman have the right to refuse others and find herself an ideal type of boyfriend? The person that Prida secretly had a crush on was David. He is good looking, rich, and could sing very well. The reason why Prida agreed to attend the party with her colleagues was because of him. When David finished his song, Prida quickly poured 2 cups of beer and walked over to him. Hesitantly, she tried to start a conversation. But instead of accepting her offer, David disdainfully ignored her, mumbling that he would definitely not want to drink beer with a pig like her. David's insulting words immediately made Prida sad and angry, but she felt helpless. He completely ignored her and then left. Seeing her friend being rejected, Kathy immediately rushed to Prida and comforted her, but it made Prida angrier because she didn't want anyone to pity her. Then, Prida quietly left the karaoke bar alone. Since it was almost midnight, the streets were deserted. She was thinking to herself that everyone, including her best friend, was just pretending to care about her on the outside, but inside they were all chuckling and mocking her when she got rejected. Slowly walking down the road, Prida stopped by an interesting-looking game store. The front of the store was displayed with lots of different game machines, some of catching animals, shooting fish, and in the middle of them was a scale with a bizarre shape. Prida went to the scale and stepped on it. She was really disappointed with her weight, and she wondered to herself whether she could lose weight or not. When the scale displayed her weight, suddenly a voice came out of nowhere. Glad to be of service. How many kilograms of fat would you like to exchange? Prida was caught off guard and looked everywhere to find where the voice came from, but she could not see anyone close by. Then, out of curiosity, Prida used her finger to spin the dial on the scale, pointing the arrow to number 2, which equals 2 kilograms. And the voice suddenly came out. Exchange of 2 kilograms of fat confirmed. Thank you. As the voice finished, the machine immediately spat out money, just like an ATM. Prida was shockingly surprised when somehow she just earned real money. But the joy did not stop there as Prida glanced down at the weight scale. She could not believe her eyes. The number displayed on the scale was 150 kilograms, which meant that she had lost 2 kilograms in an instant. Unbelievable. Thanks to the magical scale, soon she could have a beautiful looking body and make money from it, she thought to herself. Prida then grabbed the weight scale from the game shop to sneak home with it, without being aware that a man dressed in black was standing at the corner of the wall, witnessing all of her actions. The magical weight scale would change Prida's life. When she returned home, both of her arms and legs were shaking with fatigue, but thinking about how she could become rich and beautiful than ever before motivated her to carry the scale into the house. Her large frame made her move slowly and with much effort. Finally, Prida placed the scale in the corner of the room. Prida could not wait to have a beautiful body. She became very eager with the thought of admiration from her friends when they would see her transformation, especially David. However, when Prida stepped on the scale, it somehow lost its magic. It turned out that the scale would only exchange fat for money once a day. That night, Prida could not sleep at all. She spent the entire night watching the clock. When the clock struck 12 o'clock, Prida was already in front of the magic weight scale. She slowly stepped onto the scale, feeling nervous. This time, before exchanging the weight, Prida thought about how much weight she wanted to drop and how much money she wanted to earn. Why not adjust the arrow to its highest level, she thought to herself. Prida then adjusted the arrow to number 8, which meant that she would lose 8 kilograms in just one moment, or just one day. After that, she heard a voice confirming it, with money immediately appearing just like previously. This time, the amount of money was 4 times as much as it was before. Not only that, but Prida could also feel that she had lost significant weight. She couldn't hide a smile as she looked at the money lying on the floor. She thought that soon enough she would become both beautiful and rich. Prida took a week off from work and locked herself in the house so that she could focus on losing weight while avoiding the suspicions and curiosity of her neighbors or colleagues. A week later, when Prida returned to work, all of her colleagues were surprised by her new look. Although she was still overweight, she had become very striking to the eye. The one that was most happy for her was probably Kathy. During the week, Prida was absent. Kathy constantly called to check in on her. But to Prida, Kathy was nothing but a fake friend. Prida always thought Kathy just pitied her. Not only that, she also kept lecturing Prida on doing things in a better way. As Kathy greeted her, Prida arrogantly replied that she was now the beauty of the company. She then completely ignored Kathy, to her disappointment. This upset Kathy tremendously. Prida went straight to David's office, going inside without knocking. She then flirtatiously invited David to have a cup of coffee with her that night. Even though Prida had become a lot more beautiful, it was not enough to impress David. Prida also offered to pay for the coffee date, yet David remained cold. He said that even though she looked prettier than before, the way she dressed was tasteless. Being seen with her like that would decrease his social value. David added that he only dated rich girls. Beauty didn't matter much to him. Once again, Prida felt insulted by him. However, the more he hurt her, the more she wanted him. Prida was now in emotional pain after being rejected twice. She tried so hard to lose weight and became even prettier because of him. But after so many efforts, she still got rejected. She became angry and confused as to why she was rejected again and again. As her anger grew, so did her determination. She made a promise to herself to be rich at all costs, and also to become so extremely beautiful that even David wouldn't be able to resist her. With the help of the scale, Prida soon maintained a perfect body with a weight of 55 kilograms. Her weight had decreased, her body had become slimmer, but she was not entirely satisfied with the money she gained. So, with no sign of quitting her mission, Prida came up with a new plan. She decided to continue to eat as much as possible in order to gain more weight. She would then exchange the excess weight for money. She used all the money to buy the most expensive clothes. and also went to the most famous hair salon in the city to get a luxurious makeover hairdo. As time passed, Prida became extremely beautiful and classy, which attracted everyone's attention. Not only did she have new looks, but even her charisma changed opinions about her. However, as perfect as she was still very much obsessed with David. After all, he was the one man that made her change. As life seemed to be improving for Prida, a dark surprise loomed in her future. One day, as Prida returned home from the hair salon to take off her shoes, she suddenly felt like her body has become weak and skinny. She felt her waist being 5 or 6 centimeters smaller than it was moments before. Her body felt tired and weak, with no strength even though she had eaten a lot earlier. As she glanced at the clock, it was already 12, which was usually the time she exchanged her weight for money. Even though she didn't exchange her weight for money at that moment, she could feel the exact same sensations of experiencing it. Prida had to consider everything to realize what was actually happening. She quickly went to the private room where a lot of the money was suddenly scattered on the floor. Could this mean that the scale started to function on its own behalf without her even standing on it? She thought fearfully. The next day, Prida finally had her date with David. She arrived early but kept thinking about the scale operating out of her control. As Prida was worrying, a hand touched her shoulder. 10-1, it was David. He finally seemed to have succumbed to the instant beauty and the wealth of Prida. David charmed Prida with his sweet romantic words. He affectionately held Prida's hand too. The two became official, exactly what Prida had obsessed about for so long. Prida decided to invite David over to her place. Desiring to take control of David, she aimed to lure him into a trap that she planned in order for him to never leave her. She then seduced him to accompany her home. This was beyond David's expectations, since it was only their first date. Of course, he was eager and immediately accepted Prida's offer. It was a joyous night for Prida. Her only wish was to forever lay in the arms of her lover without having to think or worry about anything else. Suddenly, Prida became worried about the eerie weight scale and that it would unexpectedly function again and deplete the nutrients from her body just like before. To make sure everything remained the same, Prida hurriedly got out of bed and rushed to the well-locked private room to see. She had no idea that David was awake when she left her room. Prida tried to adjust the arrow to the lowest level, but somehow she felt like her body had already dropped a few kilograms. It appeared that the machine already worked on its own behalf in order to transfer weight for money. From then on, she continued to become thinner and thinner. Prida tried to balance it by eating more and even turned to alternative medication. Unfortunately, the amount of weight she would gain was not even 1/10 of the weight that had been taken by the weight scale. The scale became more and more out of control, and soon Prida only weighed 35 kilograms. Tremendous amounts of money covered the floor, but she was in no mood to collect it. Prida came up with an extremely dangerous solution. The next day, Prida went to a beauty specialist to try and transfer fat into her body. Prida demanded that the doctor perform fat transfer on her. The doctor refused to operate as he pointed out how dangerous the operation could be based on her current condition. Her chances of survival would be extremely low. As the doctor rejected her, Prida could not contain her anger. She smashed her bony hand on the table and shouted loudly at the doctor, demanding to have the surgery immediately. Against his better judgment, the doctor eventually had to agree to perform the operation. The operation was conducted successfully, and luckily, Prida survived. Hours later, she left the facility. Despite being implanted with quite a lot of fat, she was still in danger, as it would not be enough to even help her make the week as the weight scale increased its intensity. On her way home, Prida received a text message from David. The two of them hadn't seen each other for more than a week since their first date. David constantly texted her, eager to see her again, but Prida was afraid of being seen in her deteriorating condition. Fearing that David would leave her, Prida texted him back, saying she needed some time to rest. But what she really needed was more time to sort out her problem. 3 days later, Prida had to go back to the beauty spa to implant more fat. She was starting to look more like a moving skeleton, her face terrifyingly emaciated. The doctor was stunned by her appearance. He couldn't understand how she could become so much thinner so soon, and wondered how she lost all the fat he implanted on her. Nothing seemed to be falling in place for Prida. That evening, David went to Prida's house. He begged her to open the door for him. Prida tried to avoid being seen, and she tried to avoid seeing him. And she didn't want David to see her looking this awful. Stubbornly, David continually insisted on seeing her. Having no other choice, Prida opened the door for him. As the door opened, David entered. His face went completely dark as he witnessed the sight of the once beautiful Prida. She was extremely withered, her body all skin and bone with large scary blisters popping up all over her body. The pimples on her neck even looked infected. Prida's surprise, David didn't seem to be scared or stop his advancement towards her. David said no matter how she looked like, he still loved her. Those sweet words moved Prida to tears of happiness which started rolling down her cheeks. There had never been anyone who treated her with such sincerity and warmth. It seemed like David was trying to motivate Prida to keep fighting the situation. Prida hugged David, but unbeknownst to her, behind his face was an evil smile. As you know, David originally didn't have any feelings for Prida. He was actually just using her. After their warm embrace, he immediately asked to borrow a large sum of money from her. Infatuated and gullible Prida gave him her safe lock code and told David that he could use as much money as he wanted. But his ambition was 1,000 times bigger than that. As it happened, David accidentally found out about the existence of the spooky scale, and he knew well how much money it could make him. His intention was to take advantage of Prida's weight loss problem, so he could take the money for himself. It turned out that it was exactly what he thought. Prida had placed all of her money in the safe. She was totally unaware of David's devious plan. He comforted her, saying that he would stay with her that night. While Prida entered the bathroom, David decided to make his move. David sneaked into the secret room where the weight scale was placed. David retained his memory of that night, of the night Prida tried to use the scale, and he remembered how to use it. As Prida was still in the bathroom, dreaming about her future life with her lover David, her face suddenly went pale. She again experienced the sensation the scale gave her as it stripped her of weight. But she realized that it was not happening at the exact time it usually did. While Prida was still confused, not knowing what was happening to her, an extremely painful feeling immediately hit her, as if she had just lost about 10 kilograms. Prida's body at this time was nothing but a skeleton covered with skin. She became exhausted but still tried to open the bathroom door and kept calling out to David. But as soon as she approached the door, she collapsed onto the floor due to exhaustion. With a little strength left, she reached for the door. And as the door opened, Prida was shocked to see David standing next to the weight scale. She even experienced unbelievable emotional hurt as she then realized what was happening. But by the time she saw his true colors, it was too late. As Prida was gasping for air, David was busy counting the money in front of him. Turns out that everything was part of David's plan to pay out a huge debt which he accumulated. The people he borrowed from were very aggressive, since he couldn't pay off his debt. He had been beaten and assaulted. David had only 3 days to pay his debt. If he didn't do this, they would end him. With the intention of taking over the money as well as using Prida to make money from the scale, David was confident that Prida's situation would be the best fit for his problem. The weight scale was a cursed magical item that he was aware of, and it turned out to be part of an evil plan he arranged to make it fall into the hands of Prida. All along, David was behind everything. Because of greed and a blind love for David, Prida paid the price. Might this story serve as a warning to all of us that wealth, beauty, and obsession can destroy us not only externally, but also from within. Do you still remember the guy named David in that story about the fat for money weigh machine? Well, after that his business deteriorated, and now, since he was burdened with huge debts, he continued to deceive gullible girls. He said that he would marry them, but he wanted to borrow some money as for the future of the two. Lena, David's then girlfriend, was a little suspicious of him, since she had lent him a small amount of money a few days ago. He hadn't repaid the loan to her yet, wanted to borrow money again. However, all doubts of Lena also quickly disappeared as David attempted to persuade her. He told her when the stock price went up, he would repay her 3 times the money he owed her. Lena was totally convinced. She immediately agreed to lend him a cost saving. Her heart was filled with happiness. Knowing that Lisa had fallen for his lies, David let out a shifty smile. He thought to himself that after deceiving Lena this time, he would switch to another potential target to keep on deceiving them. Since the passing of Prida, the miraculous weight machine suddenly disappeared, causing him to leave in a very miserable situation. As the scale was all gone, it was more difficult for David to defraud people. He had to go for the rich girls, but those rich girls were not easily seduced. While sleeping with Lena, suddenly he got an unexpected call. The person on the other end of the line was the girl that David was trying to cut off contact. Unexpectedly, Lena was already awakened, which startled David. Seeing Lena's expression, David quickly turned off the phone and then explained to her. As himself being a good communicator, David could easily deceive Lena, saying it was just the wrong number. Despite luckily avoiding Lena's suspicion this time, David knew that he couldn't keep maintaining his relationship. Lena quickly became happy again, as David was pouring honey in her ears. She even gave him some good news. She told him to come to the company where she was working at to meet her boss. Perhaps David could accept a bid for advertising her company's new project. David felt slightly worried, but he tried his luck anyway. The next day, David plucked all his courage to go to the company with Lena. It was a big fashion company. If things went well, David would be able to take over the upcoming advertising project. Seeing the boss, Lena told David that it was director Kiva, and she was the one that he was going to see. The beauty and charisma of the female director were really outstanding. The young, beautiful female director quickly caught the attention of David. David hurriedly told Lena to help him get to know the director. When he saw the female director approaching him, David confidently took the initiative to introduce himself. But unexpectedly, the female director, Kiva, passed by David. She did not even shake his hand, which made David extremely disappointed. Her secretary told David to leave, as the female director wasn't impressed with his background. The female director had found out that David's company had gone bankrupt, and his personal life wasn't good, so he'd better go home. Lena couldn't believe in what the secretary was saying to David. She thought there might be some misunderstandings, so she told David to quickly explain things to the female director. But David just stood still. He bowed down and his face slowly darkened. The secretary even turned around, saying that David should not take advantage of his girlfriend anymore. Her director deeply hated the bluffers and scammers like him. Hearing the secretary, Lena could not hide her surprise and disappointment. And David was now filled with anger. He clenched his teeth. He felt like he just got humiliated so terribly. Then Lena completely cut off with David and gave him 3 days to repay all the money he had borrowed from her. David was nothing but a loser. Sitting on the side of the road, drinking a few bottles of cheap beer, and thinking about the dark time ahead of him, David couldn't stop being angry. Right that moment, a man dressed in black approached and stood in front of him. Seeing someone appear to bother him, he immediately cursed that man. But oddly, the mysterious man with an X sign on his chest didn't get angry at all. He smiled and then showed David something. He told him that it was a powerful pill. This pill would help the one that used it to become attractive to others and easy to seduce anyone. David looked for the right place to try it. The man in black told David that he just needed to swallow the pill and it would create miraculous lava that helped David achieve extreme satisfaction. Standing in front of a bar, David quickly noticed someone familiar. It was the secretary who humiliated him in front of Lena. He decided to try the pill on her. David quickly went into the bar. He went straight to the restroom and began to try the pill. As the pill was swallowed, he started to feel uncomfortable heat all over his body. As the pill hit his stomach, he felt extremely painful. He started trembling, grinding his teeth to ease the pain, but failed. 5 minutes later, the pain slowly faded, but instead, he felt like there were hundreds of insects crawling out of his body. As the mysterious man said, what came out of David's eye sockets were red creatures. They crawled out looking terrifying. Maybe these were the creepy larvae that the mysterious man was talking about. As already being told by the man, David wasn't too surprised. He quickly pulled out his hands to catch the creepy creatures crawling out of his eyes. The creatures looked like turmeric saffron, but the special thing was, they could move. David quickly disguised as a waiter. Soon later he found that secretary. David secretly put that red creatures into her drink. The secretary had no idea. She rose up her glass and drank up, not knowing that she had swallowed those red creatures. Initially succeeding, David let out a shifty smile. It turned out that after giving someone a drink of that red creature, David could see the desire from deep within their souls. It turned out that the secretary had always wanted to be the chairperson and serve tea and by her current director. David's last task at this time was to fulfill a part of her wish, just so he could easily seduce her. David didn't miss out on this opportunity. He approached the female secretary, then leaned forward and whispered in her ear as he called her Director. The female secretary was now hypnotized, her eyes gradually becoming lifeless but filled with joy. She even forgot that David was a schemer, then immediately leaned on him and said sweet words to him. David was so surprised. He didn't expect the pill would be that magical. Thanks to the pill, David began to hunt and deceive rich women. He asked them out for coffee dates, then secretly put those disgustingly red creatures into their drinks to hypnotize them. The pill would work on anyone, even the smartest girls. Soon he had more than 5 girls willing to serve him, obeyed him unconditionally. Perhaps this was the happiest moment in David's life. He didn't need to do anything but still had money to spend, had people that serve him, and live a life that could not be more prosperous. However, the pill slowly exposed its side effects with unexpected consequences. The mysterious creatures made the girls reveal their true colors. The female secretary complained to David as the other girls didn't listen to her. At this moment, David felt slightly worried. Not just her, the other girls began to behave strangely. One who loved spicy foods couldn't stop eating peppers. One girl who was introverted became even more timid and antisocial. One girl with brown hair became addicted to money. Those happy days now had become awful. David also had to endure the troubles that the girls caused him. The secretary girl wanted David to make her become the new director. David suddenly came up with an idea. He wanted to try the spell on the female director. He gave the secretary a pill and told her to make the director swallow it at all costs. She believed every single word David told her. She was under the impression that if she did exactly what he told her to do, sooner or later she would be the new director of the company. To David, everything would be his once he manipulated the female director. While David was outside waiting for the prey to fall into his trap, the female director Kiva still had no idea about it. The secretary brought her a cup of hot tea and did not forget to put the red creatures into it. As expected, the director didn't have any doubt. However, it was too late. From the first gulp the creature had went to her stomach, her vision slowly became blurry. It seemed like this creature had helped David get into the mind of others. When he found out the wish of the director Kiva, David was surprised as her wish was so simple. What Kiva wanted was just a white rabbit. So a few days later, he brought the director a gift. Inside was a lovely white rabbit. As expected, when the director saw the rabbit, she was delighted and complimented David on his thoughtfulness. Gradually, David gained the director's trust, and the two began dating. One time, when the two went to a restaurant, the female director ordered a portion of steak that wasn't cooked at all. The waiter, after hearing her request, was very confused, but still had to please the customers. The raw meat was brought up. David was shocked as he watched her eat the steak. He wondered why the female director could eat such a raw beef dish. She calmly cut pieces of it, put it into her mouth, and chewed it greedily. It made David a little bit scared. Another day, David saw her going to the warehouse with blood on her hands. Noticing the strange behavior of the female director, David decided to follow her. What Kiva did was really fishy to him. He plucked up all the courage and followed her. As he went inside, David saw Kiva sitting next to a cage. He found himself a corner and secretly watched Kiva. David saw Kiva sitting on the ground, eating something deliciously. In the dark, David tried to open his eyes as wide as he could to see what exactly it was that she was eating. But when he saw things clearly, his face was lifeless. His eyes were filled with fear. Kiva was eating an animal alive. And it was the white rabbit that he gave her a few days ago. The scene in front of his eyes couldn't be more terrifying. David couldn't dare to keep watching. He turned around and quickly ran away. As he got outside, David received a text saying that the money tried to deceive her had been transferred to his account. David was so satisfied as he finally achieved his purpose. However, unfortunate for David, he was caught by the female's director's security guards. It seemed like everything was a setup. David tried to escape. Was his plan failing? Then he was drugged into sleep. He finally woke up and he realized himself being tied to the bed. Then Kiva appeared. David trembled. He acted like he didn't know anything and begged her to untie him. To David's surprise, Kiva crawled onto the bed. Now David was so scared he had no idea what Kiva intended to do. Not only that, She also pressed her face to his body and breathed heavily as if she was about to enjoy a delicious meal. It turned out that her bloodthirsty nature was getting out of control. What she wanted to eat now was no longer the animals, but human meat. David didn't even have time to react as Director Kiva showed her sharp teeth and began to eat him. David was extremely terrified. He screamed fiercely. An awful person like him eventually got what he deserved. The creatures that he created turned out to be the ones that killed him. This story is about a female student named Anne who just attended University of the Arts this year. There had been stereotype implying that those who study arts must be good looking. Therefore, she tried to force herself to fit into it. Anne spent most of her time learning photo editing and taking care of a social network. All her photos were carefully edited. They all looked sexy and seductive and attracted countless comments and thousands of likes. However, it somehow made Anne become more antisocial. Since she went famous on social media, she had already gone out and she devoted most of the time she had to growing her social network accounts, because she didn't want anyone to see her average-looking face. It was a huge difference from what she looked like on the post-edited photos. Her eyes were not that big, the nose was not that tall. In general, all the features on her face were not special at all. From a normal average-looking girl that no one paid attention to, Anne began to receive more flirting messages. Some days, she could receive dozens of them. She actually knew that the people who sent her those messages didn't really like her. They were just interested in the sexy photos that she posted. Like many other girls, Anne also secretly had a crush on someone. It was a guy she accidentally met at the sports field. He caught the ball which flew to her. After collecting information about the guy, Anne found out that his name was Manzo, a hot boy of the painting class. Anne had really wanted to confess her feelings for him, but she wasn't brave enough. It was when Anne was about to give up, a miracle happened. That afternoon, Anne suddenly received a text message saying, "Hello," from a man named Manzo. At first, Anne didn't think it was Manzo, but when she checked her message, she felt like her heart was about to explode as she saw his profile picture. It was hard to believe. Manzo actually texted her to express his intention of knowing her and asking her out. But after a few minutes, Anne quickly returned to reality. Did he just text her because of those carefully edited pictures of her? Moreover, Manzo also wanted to see her face to face. What if he saw a real face? Because if it happened, he would no longer like her. Anne really didn't have the courage to go see Manzo. But she refused to offer this time. She might never get a chance to get to know him again. Right at that moment, Anne was looking at her phone, thinking whether she should accept the invitation or not. Short advertisement popped up on the screen. It was an app called Beauty App. First part of the advert appeared a girl with flawless beauty on the red X background, but with just a few steps, she became extremely beautiful. This app allowed people to make changes to their own face in reality without any pain. But it had a limitation as it consumed a lot of battery, and if the phone suddenly ran out of battery, the face would return to normal. Because of a date with Manzo, Anne quickly downloaded the application Beauty App to her phone without hesitant, and spent more than 3 hours editing her face to make it look perfect. The app really worked. When she hit the start button, Anne's face began to change, like what she had edited. When she looked in the mirror, Anne couldn't believe her eyes. Having finished changing her appearance, she prepared to go see Manzo. Anne had texted him that the two would meet in front of the amusement park gate. The effect of the app was even more evident as everyone on the street was admiring her beauty. and Anne loved it. It was the first time in her life that she felt so confident walking on the street. And perhaps Manzo would be in love with her at first sight. Anne got to the amusement park after 15 minutes of walk. Since it was a weekday, the amusement park was deserted and there was no need to queue for tickets. Anne saw Manzo had already waited for her at the gate. It seemed like he actually prepared for this meeting just as much as she did. Manzo's face was really very delicate, with all the lines so perfect on it, as if they were meticulously drawn. From the first look at him, Anne really was shaken by him. Her face turned red, looking like a tomato. She was shy. Both shyly greeted at each other, then entered the amusement park. Manzo immediately suggested taking the roller coaster. They had a really good time. Somehow he knew all the games that Anne liked. Even what Anne liked to eat. Manzo knew it well. It seemed that he had learned a lot about Anne through her social network. Eventually, in order for both of them to get closer, he suggested Anne to play the haunted house with him. Anne was really scared, but when she heard Manzo promise to protect her, she decided to play with it. Right from the beginning, Anne's whole body was suddenly trembling with fear. But at that moment, Manzo held his hand that immediately made Anne more assuring. Not only that Manzo was also very brave, despite constantly encountering scary things on the way, he didn't get startled and always tightly held Anne's hand, thinking that the haunted house would bring them closer together. However, it had caused them huge trouble. A ghost with a long tongue suddenly let out a ferocious growl. But somehow when the actor saw her, his face immediately became pale, his eyes widened, and he was truly shocked. It turned out that Anne's face inadvertently frightened him. Her face split into many small pieces, looking really scary. The actor disguised as a ghost turned out being the one who got scared. He screamed and then quickly ran away, with which he made the couple very surprised. Anne guessed that perhaps there was a problem with her face, since there was no signal in the tunnel. She quickly covered her face and made an excuse that she had abdominal pain and needed to go out. If she went out, her face would definitely become normal, as if it wasn't getting distorted. Exactly like what she had expected, the moment she left the haunted house, her face went back to normal. But the actor disguised as a ghost that she previously encountered had already seen her strange face. After what happened at the haunted house, Anne was so scared that she had to take out the mirror and check her face every few minutes to make sure that she still looked beautiful. Luckily, Manzo didn't have any doubt about her. He even suggested going on another date with her. It wasn't until Anne realized that she had been out of her house for 4 hours that she found out that the phone was about to run out of the battery. That also meant her face was about to return to its old look. Anne had fully charged the battery before going out, yet did not expect the application would consume too much battery. Before completely getting back to the old look, Anne's face began to deform. The beauty that made everyone admire now became something that made them scared and shocked. And Manzo also saw her strangely creepy face, but somehow he didn't say anything. Facing the disgusted gaze from people made Anne panic. She used her phone to cover her face and immediately rushed home. At that time, Anne didn't even have the time to think about how Manzo was feeling. He must have been really angry when she left him like that. Since that day, Anne had locked herself in a room, not feeling like eating at all. Perhaps after what had happened, Manzo would contact her again, because he simply didn't want to be in a relationship with a liar like Anne. Just to think of it, Anne quickly turned on her phone and deleted the freaky application that she had installed a few days ago. Her face immediately returned to its old look. Anne no longer wanted to use that application to become beautiful. However, contrary to what she was thinking that night, Manzo suddenly sent her a text with an address attached to it, telling her to go to the destination as he wanted to tell her a secret. So Anne decided to go there to tell him everything. Of course, this time Anne went to see him without the help of that beauty app to make her look gorgeous. Did Manzo want to tell Anne a secret about him? But why did he have to ask her to come to his house? Anne was feeling curious. It took a while for her to find out the destination. Eventually she found the place Manzo had told her to come by. Just the moment she was about to knock on the door, she immediately heard people arguing from inside. Not wanting to disturb them, Anne waited outside and overheard their story. It sounded like Manzo and his dad was arguing with each other. It seemed like his dad was trying to talk him out of doing something. After a while, Anne was feeling curious, so she approached the window and sneakily looked inside, and accidentally found out a horrifying secret. After a heated argument with his dad, Manzo turned on his computer and talked to a man who dressed in black. The X on his chest was very similar to that which appeared on the background image of the beauty app. It turned out that Manzo was just like Anne. He relied on the app to turn his disgusting face into a handsome one. But what shocked Anne was the conversation between him and the mysterious man. It turned out that Manzo was the one who coded the app and sent it to girls like Anne to test its effect. After finding out the truth, Anne was so angry she knocked the door hard and was thinking of beating him terribly. But Anne couldn't do that. She instead felt so disappointed as the person she secretly loved was such a terrible person, and he was like that for such a long time. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. Manzo and his parents went out to see as they heard the knocks. But the moment he went out to check, Anne had already left. At this moment, Manzo was furious because he thought that since Anne was just like him, she would easily accept his true identity when she found out his secret. But instead, he felt betrayed by her leaving. He went back inside and continued to immerse himself in the freaky application. He told the mysterious man that he was going to test phase 2 of the app on his body. The mysterious man told him that it would be too risky to do that, and the boy could get himself killed by what he created. But Manzo didn't hesitate at all. He started upgrading the application. Manzo had made a flawless face for him, and he was planning to make it permanently his own. The last step was to install it on the phone, click start, and his appearance would change forever. Manzo was so excited to change the look of his face this time, but he had no idea how serious the consequences would be for him to take. Despite disagreement with the work of his son, Manzo's mother still loved him very much. Seeing him working tirelessly, she brought a glass of hot water into his room. But Manzo didn't feel the love of his mom for him. Instead, he scolded her. Manzo had pushed his mother away while causing the glass to splash and the water poured onto the computer. His face suddenly became darkened. He felt worried and anxious. But that could not change anything at all, since the computer was filled with water, and of course, the face-changing process was also interrupted. A notification popped up on the screen saying it had a system error. It was also at this moment Manzo suddenly felt backwards, as if someone pulled him to the ground. What would happen to him? Now, let's move to the part where Anne was on her way home that night. Anne met an old man and an old woman. The three were having a friendly conversation, and they complimented her for being gentle and sweet. Since that moment, Anne became more confident with the face that she once hated. Although she was not as beautiful as her friends at school, it did not make her life less happy. But the moment Anne realized the true values of life was also the moment she encountered a truly terrifying thing. As she was making her way back home, she felt like someone was watching her. Turned around and saw a man in a black hat stealthily following her. She was scared and couldn't think straight. Anne had no idea who the man was and what he was up to, but she knew that she was in danger. Aware of the danger that may happen to her, she walked faster, and the man also quickly chased her. He even followed her to her home, but unfortunately, Anne went inside just in time and quickly locked all the doors. Anne thought that she had escaped the creepy man, but it seemed like he didn't give up easily. Not yet able to breathe a sigh of relief, the man came to the front door and kept knocking. To her surprise, that man was actually Manzo. Anne was really scared. She wondered to herself, wasn't everything over? What was he up to? Is he going to kill me? Anne shook her head in disbelief and asked him to leave before she called the police. But he was still outside. He told her that he wanted to show her his new look. He took off his mask, saying that he would have this handsome face for the rest of his life. He even told Anne to use that beauty app again to possess permanent beauty. Out of curiosity, Anne looked outside the window to take a look at him. But she quickly got startled. His face had become completely disfigured, looking exactly like a monster. What would happen next? Can you guess?